Hi, I'm Riddhi Raj, the Reading Fairy, and welcome to the author interview. Books have this magical ability to take us to places that we've only dreamed of, to weave through stories and to fill our imagination. And taking us through her works is the incredibly talented Lauren Lopes. Lauren, welcome to the author interview.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me here.
Of course, it's an absolute pleasure. And before we get to your beautiful book, I want to jump into your journey as a writer. How did this all begin for you?
So, I have been a reader since I was tiny. So, since I could read, I was reading books. And throughout my childhood, I was writing whenever I could. So, we used to write little plays with my siblings. I wrote plays during school. I wrote short stories and poems, and I've written music. So, every part of my life has had writing in it. And then about 7 years ago, my kids were a little bit older. They had been babies and they finally got out of that crazy stage. And I just started writing for myself. It was in a journal and it started with a few scenes here and there with dialogue. And I was like, oh, I can actually do this. And it eventually evolved into short stories, then a full novel, then a couple of novels. And this particular book happened during lockdown. I got this idea and I decided to run with it. And eventually it evolved into this full fledged novel that's eventually going to become a series. So writing has been part of my life ever since I was able to. And yeah, it's brought me here.
First of all, I'm in awe of the level of creativity that you hold, Lauren. That is
Thank you.
phenomenal. I mean, not only to have been writing ever since you could write, but also to be so diverse in your talent. That is something truly, truly unique, and I don't often see it amongst writers. And what I think is so cool is the way in which this developed. As you know, it was an idea and the dialogues, and now it's come to where there's a series that we can look forward to. And one thing I saw this on your TikTok, which was where you were like, there's load shedding, and we're like, Eskom, and ons gaan nou braai, and there's a
Yeah.
bucket. And that is as Josie as it can possibly get. But before we get any further, please introduce your book to the audience because it is gorgeous.
Okay, so hopefully this won't be backwards, so we can flip it. But this is The Rose Enigma, Beauty and the Beast retelling set in Johannesburg. And the beauty character is a hacker, and the beast is a reclusive billionaire living in Johannesburg on his estate. And the antagonists in the book are the wolves, and it's a retelling of the beloved animated movie, but it's entirely its own story and very much South African.
I
And this
absolutely
is
adore that. I adore that, Lauren, because it makes me think of other local suspense romance writers. And this is why I feel like there needs to be a little bit of a shift in our reader dynamic. Because, sure, there are lovely books coming from international authors, but let's not forget what's available right here. And this is something that's for the fans of suspense, of romance, those who are the fans of a lovely Disney story, but have now grown up. And so that is something that I find to be so interesting. Now, when it came to the Rose Enigma, what do you feel was a scene that you adored writing and why?
Okay, there were so many. Um, so the scenes that surprised me in the way that I enjoyed writing them were the group scenes.
Mm.
I come from a big Lebanese South African family, and other cultures like Indian families, Greek, Italian will all know that dynamic. When I say
Mm.
that, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And it was so great for me how that translated to the page and the banter and the silliness and ribbing each other. And a theme that emerged that I hadn't expected was one of found family, because
Mm.
both the main characters were isolated in some way.
Yeah.
And it emerged organically through the writing process. So I'd say a couple of the scenes I really loved writing, which actually have really resonated with readers. The first one was between the main character Isabella and another female character in the book, Red, and it was just like girl talk and being a girl's girl. And then the other scene was my take on the Be Our Guest
Yeah.
sequence in the actual movie. And that was where you meet all the secondary characters.
Mm.
And what I can say is some people know this, but not everyone does, that the characters introduced there will be the main characters in the other books in the series. So that's something you would have heard first here.
I am so excited about that because I love the fact that, yes, having this background of huge families and the dynamics that occur in them played a role, but also sometimes, even if you are born into that type of space, you do still feel alone. And so, found family, something so important to our generation, and for good reason too, because that's the family you can choose. And so I'm
Exactly.
sure that is why it's resonated so much with people. And I also, when it comes to series of books, I love when I get the full story of the characters that I enjoy. And that's what is so exciting about the fact that this is one of many more to come, because there are these characters who you come to love and you just wish there was a little more of them. And now you'll get a lot more. And so that, I think, from a reader perspective, is
Yes.
something that is going to be so enjoyable. Now, shifting slightly, were there scenes that you felt were a little more challenging to write, and why did it feel this way for you?
Yes. I don't want to give too much away, but there is what I'll say is there's an antagonist and there's a villain, and
Mm.
you quite quickly figure out who is who. But the actual villain of the story was the hardest thing to write, to the point where every time I had to edit his scenes, I would procrastinate, would find anything
Oh.
else to do, and I had to force myself. And he turned out to be one of the most revolting people that, that, that you can imagine. Um, Also because he was like one of those creepy men you would find online that
Mm.
pretty much every woman has dealt with. Yeah,
Mm.
your reaction shows everyone knows what I'm talking about. And it's actually really funny to me the universal hate he has received from readers across the
That's a
board.
well-written
And I
villain.
hated him too. That is. So I'd say those were very difficult. And the reason is because in a lot of ways, I write from empathy. So, you know,
Mm.
when an actor says, I'm a method actor, and
Mm.
you get they like live as the actor. So, I also do have an acting background, and in a lot of ways, I'd say I'm a method writer. So, I
Oh.
step into my characters. I almost live as them for those
Mm.
hours that I'm writing them. And to write a character that is so different to my value system, my beliefs, how I operate in the world was
Yeah.
really challenging, but it was also very interesting, like from a psychological perspective, to say, how does someone actually get to that point? And how do I make him feel authentic and not like a cartoonish 2D
Mm.
villain?
Wow. That I think that's something that I haven't actually thought about before. How challenging it must be to write a villain. Um, and I think the fact that there's this universal hate for him, it means that you've really gotten him as he should be. That's a proper villain. Afterwards, did you feel like you needed to deep clean your brain?
Very much. Like I would step away from my computer and just be like, oh, gross. I just grossed myself out. And my editor and you I think know her quite well, Rosalie. Every time she sent me notes, we actually had this little thing that emerged. We'd be like, effing, I won't say his name, but effing this character. That was all we needed to say because he was that abhorrent. Yeah, it was difficult.
Wow.
And I did have to step away and then like recenter myself.
That's actually so interesting. And I think that perhaps the acting background is what helped you to create such a villainous villain, for lack of a better description. Because in acting, you do have to sort of step into that character. And I can imagine that if you hadn't had that acting background, it may have been even more challenging than it was
Yes.
right now. And as a reader, do you feel like the books you've read or the books and genres that you enjoy have influenced your writing?
Absolutely. So at the moment, I mostly read romance and romantic suspense, but I've also really always loved crime fiction and thrillers,
Mm.
and I felt like this married that because it is a very twisty plot and has all the thriller elements of it, but it is very much a romance. So also the books that I loved as a child were very much about found family and hope.
Mm.
So it was very interesting to see those themes coming through in my own book. A lot of it wasn't uh, conscious until after I reread it and realized what had happened. I'm absolutely influenced by the books I read and brilliant writers, both contemporary writers, people that I can now call my peers, which is crazy to me because um, I released this book on the 1st of October, and it still doesn't feel quite real that,
Yeah.
sometimes you feel like a kid playing dress up with your mom's clothes when you get to say that these incredible authors are your peers. But
Oh.
so both contemporary authors and peers, and then those that have come before me. And when you say that you stand on the shoulders of giants, I think with every writer who is an avid reader, that is absolutely the case. And it builds you up and it informs the way you write and your process and everything, sometimes in a subconscious way that you're not fully aware of.
I think it's so interesting how it was only when you were reviewing what you'd already written that so much of this came through because I think that we don't often realize how much what we take into ourselves influences our thoughts and our processes. So that I find that to be quite interesting. And another thing that I noticed, especially because our FMC is a hacker, women in STEM, I stand it. But
Yes.
was was that something that was a conscious decision for you, or did she just happen?
Um, she was probably the most fully formed character in my mind. Like she stepped into my brain and she's this absolutely unapologetic, brash, sometimes unhinged young woman who I adore with my whole soul. Um, so she was always just a hacker to me. And I think that it was so from that perspective, it was a very intentional choice, in
Mm.
the way I characterized her. But what did emerge unexpectedly was the fact that she's ADHD. So her
Oh.
neurodivergence and the characterization of that sort of came out as I started writing the scenes. And that was something when I read back and I was like, you are very ADHD coded. And then interestingly, I was late diagnosed towards the end of the process of writing
Okay.
the book. So I was diagnosed ADHD,
Mm,
and I hadn't ever identified the ADHD part of my brain. I had sort of self-diagnosed as
mm.
autistic, and then when I got the formal diagnosis, the therapist was like, "Oh, by the way, you are also ADHD." And then when I read back, I was like, "Okay, so obviously I was projecting a lot of myself into her without realizing it." So that was very interesting how that emerged organically. But from the hacker perspective, she was just always that in my mind. Absolutely, women in STEM, all variations of that meaning. She's that. Yeah.
I am really fond of the not just, you see, sometimes in contemporary writing, people put forth disability as tokenism or just a novelty. And the mere fact that she emerged in this way and how she did so, I think is something that is really important because now this is not just a novelty. This is helping people who will also identify with her. And everybody needs representation. And so when we've got a lead character that is brilliant and sassy, and she's also neurodivergent, it not only reassures people who have identified, it reassures others to say, hey, maybe I've got a daughter that has ADHD. And look, she can be brilliant. And I think that is something that is so important. And especially because it was not a conscious decision, it means that you wrote with such authenticity. It's not a caricature of a true experience. And going back to the Rose Enigma as an entirety, I love the fact that we've got the woman in STEM. We've got the guy that's the reclusive one. We have got this representation, and we've got South Africa. I don't see anything that's not to love about the Rose Enigma, except if you don't actually have a copy. Which leads me to, where can people get their hands on a copy of the Rose Enigma?
Okay, so this is the South African paperback version. This is the local uh, paperback that you can buy only in South Africa. So that you can get off my website, which is pretty easy to remember. It's laurenlopez.com. And then if you are on Kindle Unlimited, it's there as well, and on Amazon as an ebook. And for people who would like an international paperback in various markets, it's also available as a paperback on Amazon. And I've just completed the process of uh, releasing paperbacks to different markets and through different channels. So that's kind of in the middle of happening. Once that's done, I will share all of that on my socials. And then you'll be able to order the paperback via Ingram or Barnes and Noble, depending on where you are. And then another really cool thing is that usually if you are enrolled in Kindle Unlimited, they wouldn't allow ebooks to be distributed any other way, but they've
Mm.
just allowed people to distribute via the library. So I know a lot of South Africans don't know this, but if you have a library card, you can access
The Libby
free
app.
ebooks and audiobooks via Libby, the Libby
Hmm.
app. And it is also uploading there. It's taking a little bit of time, but hopefully within a week or so, you'll be able to get the ebook via Libby through your library. So those are all the channels. So my website, Amazon, and Libby.
Lauren, you get full marks for the level of accessibility that your book has. And I absolutely adore that because ultimately, when you write a book, it's because you want for people to be able to read it. So kudos to you for making it available in so many different ways and means. And I honestly
Thank
cannot
you.
wait for the rest of the books. Have you started writing the next one yet?
Yes, so
Yay!
all four of them have been plotted. So each book is going to be a different fairy tale retelling, but it all fits within an overarching plot. And the premise of the book is around the wolves at,
Yeah.
that attack the castle, and the overarching plot is around these wolves. And you'll have to read the book to see how that fits in. But I have plotted them all out, and the second one is underway. So I need to get cracking on that.
Well, I guess for now, we shall bide our time and delve into the Rose Enigma while you go on creating your magic. And Lauren, I want to thank you so much for being here on the author interview and also for sharing your immense talent with the world. I cannot wait to see all that you achieve. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me and giving me this opportunity. I really appreciate it as a new indie author who's just trying to get my name out there. I appreciate every opportunity, and it was lovely to chat with you.
Of course, you're more than welcome.